you climbed a mountain together or anything?
No. That was 2 years ago, and never again.
Okay, guys, you two together is something that not a lot of people knew would ever happen. Snappi, you've spent a history of playing in Denmark on teams that, as you mentioned before, haven't had the pick of the litter with Danish squads. And Zonic's been the opposite. He's been top of the totem pole. So what's your previous relationship, and like how well do you guys know each other?
I think we obviously didn't know each other that well, but I would still say since we both came from 1.6, obviously there was, we were some of the few people left from that era.
Yeah.
So we played together in Face It with some of the old boys. So I would say we knew each other from that, and then also at tournaments, I think we always had a good vibe when talking to each other. But we obviously never worked together. We did, because I was standing in for Astralis for a short while.
Oh, really? Okay.
But that was a very tough situation, I would say, for Astralis, because they had 2 players out, and I think it was hard for them to be fully motivated. But I just remember Danny was like a really welcoming guy at that point also.
Zonic, what's your opinion watching Snappi on ENCE for the past few years?
I think the playstyle that ENCE had was kind of similar to what we had in Vitality. But I also think that he definitely deserves having, what he did with ENCE, building players from scratch, taking talents up from, whether it was from FPL or, getting some players from Movistar. And then later on having us in Vitality getting Spinks away from him. And, I think he definitely deserves to be on the top of the cake. I think what he did with ENCE was remarkable and massive props for them. But here, now he's part of a team where we're not gonna sell players for to sustain the business model. We are here to win trophies, and now he's part of a team where we are the big dogs getting players and not the other way around.
That's a whole different philosophy. I think a lot of us watched you sort of work on Spinks, and then Spinks get to a point where he's like top 20 and then gets sold, and then the same thing with Sunpius. I mean, there's something to be proud of to be able to do that, but at the same time, it must be a little bit tiring to have to do it over and over again. So is the change of atmosphere something that you're recognizing right now, that you're on a team that the aim is not necessarily to like sell players, it's just to get you the best and keep the best?
Yeah, I mean, the decision to, at the end of the day, leave ENCE came down to the fact that if I had some really great players under me, I would love to keep them. And I didn't believe that we could do that going forward. And that was why I took the decision. And this offer came in, and I always had a lot of respect for Danny and Lars with the way they work with teams. And already they obviously had Magisk, and I thought at the time NiKo, but it was just a different opportunity than I ever had before to kind of be at the top of the food chain. Mm. So I really, obviously, I felt like it was the right decision. That's why I went here. But now I know that it's the right decision, because just from working with Lars and Danny, I think I'm going to learn a lot. And even if it were to fail, I think I'm going to learn a lot from this experience, regardless of the outcome. It's
been a pretty hectic postseason for a lot of people in the last couple of months. Heroic having to recreate their team. You guys having very little time before the RMRs to put together. Kassad having to put together his bleed roster and go to the RMR right away. So what's your last few weeks? What's it been like?
No, I mean, I think Lars and I, we do what we have been doing in the past 2 teams. We try and create the foundation and the dream for the players. It is about, getting the players on the same page, creating a common dream. For some, it's going to be their very first major, and for Magisk, it's probably going to be to try and beat his former teammate in Dupree. So if you can create that red thread throughout the team, that's always how we start. But we also know it's going to be a tough task. When I joined Vitality in 2022, I obviously had big ambitions, but one of the first things that I told them was that it will take time to create an international roster. And it took pretty much a year. I would say we won EPL in fall, but it is just a tough task creating a team from scratch. However, I would say that Marco has been used to an international roster. Now I had 2 years of experience as well, so hopefully it will be a bit smoother and not take a full year of having to learn from our mistakes. But we don't have any we don't have that many expectations for this season. It is about, not stressing and putting too much pressure on ourselves. It's a tough field of teams right now. I think it's a new game as well on top of that, and it's just about adapting. So of course we go into this with a humble mindset. We need to work hard, and even though the lineup on paper looks really solid, we don't take anything for granted. We need to improve.
Is that an advantage or disadvantage, the fact that now it's a new game? Or would you rather it be CSGO with all the other lineups being the way they were and understanding the game very well and having more time and chemistry together?
I think for the long term, it's an advantage. But for the short term, it's for sure a disadvantage. I would say that a team that comes in with a full base that can work out the meta and add new stuff constantly will have an advantage over a team that is brought together where a lot of the base needs to get down before you can actually develop and be ahead of the meta. Mm-hmm. So I would say in 6 months, it's an advantage, but for now, it's not. Obviously, people will say that, we are 3 guys from in, so you should have a base, but it's not really the same because we obviously have to move some positions around now. Also, when we split up in ends, it was actually towards the tail end of CSGO, and we went to a few CS2 tournaments, but that was pretty much without prac because of the circumstances back then. So we didn't really get to create that base. So right now we're just building the house, so to speak, and then we cannot really stay ahead of the meta right now. That's going to be in 2, 3, 6 months that we'll get there.
Obviously, your playing career was in 1.6, but in CSGO, you still played a lot, and then your entire coaching career has been in CSGO as well. What's your experience now coaching in a game that, well, I have to be honest, when I watch people play CS2, they're still playing CSGO in a lot of ways. How much in-game time are you spending just to feel how the game is versus how much time are you watching how people are playing the game today?
I think I'm watching a lot, but I think that a lot of the teams has had a head start. I mean, I haven't coached a single official game in CS2. Last official game I had was in EPL, just when the game was released. So of course, I think in that sense I'm obviously a little bit behind, but I think as soon as we get more, our playbook on point, and we know, right now we are working on the basic things with this lineup. Mm-hmm. So we don't really have that much time to theorycraft, and we're getting straight, we're playing, Blast first, and then we go straight to Katowice, and then after that it's RMR. So for me, my focus has been on just, to get us as ready as possible on 6 maps, and not really looking into, okay, let's theorycraft. And I think that goes for a lot of teams, but I think we will see it, and most likely, especially for some of these tier 2 teams who don't travel that much, mm-hmm. that they will come up with some new stuff. And then, I've always had it like that, you can use a lot of time on theorycrafting, but looking at other teams who did the prep for you, so you can steal that. That is also, stealing strats from teams. That is definitely also a solution. But my focus point right now is just to get these 5 players together and make us as strong as possible.
Yeah, and as Marco said, it might be unfair to say that you guys have a base, but you have some familiar faces. The one player who I wonder how much they need to learn to be able to get on par with everyone else is Boros. And what's the experience been like playing with Boros?
I obviously have a lot of experience having players like this. So mm-hmm. Every player that comes up, like Boros, have different strengths and different weaknesses. So for now, it's mostly about finding most weaknesses and trying to improve those. But I think now that he really has a very experienced team around him, he's also motivated to learn. So for the next 3 to 6 months, there's going to be, I think, a lot of development on his side. So we try to develop him in the areas where we see weaknesses.
And you said you're building a house while you're living in it. What is this house going to look like in terms of style? Can you see that already? Are you letting the players dictate how it's feeling and then you're building around that?
I would say that me and Danny have, I don't want to get too much into the details of it, but we have talked a little bit about who has what focus areas, because right now we can obviously sit and look at the same, but that wouldn't make sense since we can be in 2 different areas and have a lot of impact and build it that way. But as Danny said, I think Vitality and ENCE in 2023 was actually playing very similar styles. So I don't think it's that much of a problem. The thing is about building this base is that when we are putting in 10 base default strats that you kind of have to have, it's very hard to then sit on top of it with the limited practice that we have.
What are the situation with Falcons in terms of like where you guys boot camp, or like where are there facilities that you guys are building, or are there places that you normally go to do your practices? Like what's the team or the organization experience like for the players?
Yeah, I mean, so far we have been boot camping in Denmark. We had a boot camp with our PC where we were, as I said before, talking about the dream and getting to know each other, team bonding, setting the strategy.
Have you climbed a mountain together or anything?
No. That was 2 years ago and never again. No, but we did some activities, but not like on a big mountain in France. That's in the past. But no, I think so far also because of Lars, he's gotten a bigger role than he had in the previous teams. He's looking into building facilities here in Europe, most likely going to be in Denmark, and he's in control of that. Obviously, a lot of when you have a full schedule boot camp, every month or whatever, that's not going to happen. So for us, it's going to be at the beginning of each season, and then prior to majors or any big tournaments where we see it fit that we need a boot camp. For us, it's the main job will be on the server at home, but otherwise we're looking into facilities here nearby.
One last question for you, Marco. Overall, for CS2, are you generally optimistic or generally pessimistic for the future?
I'm optimistic for the future for sure. I've obviously been very critical of the game, but I also think you need to be critical in order for potentially the developers seeing where to improve. I still think there's a long road ahead, but I do think the game feels better than it did 3 or 4 months ago. But I think at this point it comes more down to the changes, especially around the economy and potentially MR12 and the round times and stuff like this. I think small tweaks here and there can get us very far, but I've seen that obviously up until now they updated the game regularly. So I would say I'm optimistic about it. It also took some time for CSGO, and I for sure started enjoying playing CS2. And I think that's the most thing. It's still, at the end of the day, CS. Still a way to go for it to be as good as CSGO was. But it obviously has the potential to be even better if they keep updating it.